New build commander skill every tier 10 CV, please. Can I show the Hakuryu captain? Yes. Okay, so this is only a 19-point captain. I haven't gone crazy to get 21 points and everything or whatever. What I just used was this. So I'm going to redistribute this and we'll talk about CV talents, because I'm sure there are a whole bunch of people here that are curious because like, whoa, everything changed, what the hell. So in terms of carrier stuff, each commanders now have 4 different pages. They have carriers, they have cruisers, they have destroyers, they have battleships, and eventually they'll have submarines. And when they're put on one of those things, you get your own little window to where you can put them, you know, specialize them to a thing. So this is the carrier screen. These talents cost 1 point, these 2 points, these 3 points, these 4 points. For the Hakuryu, Japanese planes, they do high damage, they have very little health, they're very fast. They take a long time to set up an attack line, but that's basically it. So they have very long telegraphed attacks, but they do pretty decent damage. So here we've got some engine talents that can give us more boost. Boost is nice. Boost can help you speed up, slow down, it can help you aim. But you don't need boost to do the job. This talent can give you an additional aircraft in your little defensive thing that's over your hull, which you don't need either. So it really comes down to aircraft restoration time, which means you get planes cycled back faster. So I take this more, I call it more in my little more faster, healthier, stealthier thing, so more planes. And I was using the fighter stuff, but we can talk about that in a second. So for a basic Hakuryu, more faster, this is going to make the planes go faster. They have very little health, they rely on speed. You want speed. You want this basically always, but definitely you want it for the Japanese. I'm going to talk about these after, because these are other things we can choose. Then we're going to go into healthier. This reduces the amount of damage you take when you're shot by AA by 10%. It's a little bit, but every little bit helps. And this gives you more health, and your planes have very little health, so every little bit matters. This is the main build. This is 9 points. This is it. Everything after this is flavor. Now I used to have, and I actually have an emote, which is more faster, healthier, stealthier, which was replaced by this, Hidden Menace, but unfortunately this is bugged right now. It reduces your hull, the CV's detection, but it slows the planes returning, which is okay. If they take longer to get back to the carrier, that's okay. But they also take longer to get out. So when they shoot, and then they climb to air cover, that takes twice as long now, and they get shot down. So you don't really get any planes back. So that sucks. So unfortunately, this is not currently working as intended, so I can't take this. So this is the main build. I think I might tell him something in a second. All right, so that's the 9 points. So we've got another 10. Hakuryu is pretty torp-based. If we wanted to go damage, there's a damage skill that gives 10% more of what the damage you throw is. So our torps do 9,300 damage, so this would give us another 930 damage if we're hitting torpedo protection. If we're not hitting torpedo protection, it doesn't do anything. But if we do hit torpedo protection, an additional 933 damage, you can see the damage there, actually goes through and does the thing. So it's not that you do more damage, it's that you lose less damage when you're striking an armored target. So that's cool. So we could do that if we're doing like randoms or something. But in the competitive thing, I took all of these fighter talents. Why? Because this increases the patrol range of the fighter by 10%, so it makes that circle bigger. When planes come into the circle, after a little bit of time, those planes go, hey, there's somebody in our patrol range, and they go over and they start to fight, like they chase them. This gives you more of those consumables. So instead of having 3 patrol fighters across 3 different types of planes, you have 4. So you have 12 altogether instead of 9. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. Over a 20-minute match, most matches go 10 to 15 minutes. Having 12 instead of 9 is really, really big. This is a great 2-point talent. This is called Interceptor. It gives you even more patrol radius, which is cool. But the big thing it does is it makes you immune to enemy patrol fighters. So sometimes if you put fighters down to protect an area, A CV can come in and put fighters over here, just on the edge of the range, and they'll kind of path into each other and then shoot each other and go away. So nothing happened. You used your consumable and he used his consumable and they just killed each other and nothing happened. This makes sure that if you put something somewhere, it's going to protect that spot. It's important. If you need something protected, that's why you put it there. This guarantees that it protects unless they get shot down by a ship or they shoot down enemy planes and go away. And then lastly, there's enhanced reactions. What this does is a little confusing. So when the planes fly down, when you call them, they take 5 seconds before they start patrolling. They start doing the thing. Well, what this does, it takes longer for the planes to come in. Even though enhanced reactions, you'd think they'd be there faster, right? But instead of taking 5 seconds to come down and start patrolling, they take 7.5. Because it's a 50% increase in time. But the difference comes in is when enemy planes come into the patrol range, instead of having 2 seconds before they go, oh, there's planes over there, and then chasing, they do it immediately, or basically immediately. So as soon as somebody comes up, planes, and they go in and they immediately go after, rather than just kind of like, okay, he left, we're good. No, you don't want that. You want it to latch. You want it to go after and do the thing. It does reduce the action time of the consumable, however, which is kind of rough. Because fighter consumable is 60 seconds. That takes it down to 45. 7.5 of which is it just showing up. So if you do this, you actually kind of have to... I'm just going to... Well, whatever. We can change that later. You have to, at least in my opinion... use this in slot 5, Squadron Consumable, which increases your consumable duration by 50%. So it takes a 90-second fighter and reduces it down to 67.5. 7.5 of when it's coming down, and then 60 seconds on station. Why do you do this? Because if you take the time to fly all the way over to a friendly ship so you can give them a fighter, you need it to stay there so you can go do something. Because if it's just going to go down every 30 seconds and you just keep having to fly back and fly back and fly back, you're not getting anything done. So having the additional time means you can do this and then go off and do something else, which is, in my opinion, important. If you're not going for a fighter build, if you really don't want to play defensively, you want to play offensively. If you're in the Hakuryu, you're definitely taking this. You throw torps. Japanese torps hurt. More damage is better. Do the damage. Outside of this, there's really nothing else. It says this is a recommended skill, 0.3 more damage on your AP bombs. That's nothing. That's terrible. This is a waste of points. This is crap. So the answer to that is never. Still gonna have 6. If you had a 21 point commander, you'd have 8. So where would you put the other 3 if you're not worried about this? You could put it in... You could double down into torps. This reduces the arming distance, so when you drop the torps, they take an amount of space before they arm. So that allows you to drop a little closer to the target, which means you're probably a little more likely to hit the target. This makes your torps go faster, and that still leaves you with technically 4 more points if you had a 21 point commander. So then where would you put the other 4? I really don't think the bomb speed matters at all. You don't need secondaries on a Hakuryu because you're not a secondary thing. It's really a German gimmick as far as CVs go. I don't think you need more aiming or faster aiming time. Everybody'd like to aim faster though, so that's an option. If you wanted to take this, then you could take one of the 1-pointers that suits your taste. Maybe additional patrol range or more engine boost, something like that. So it'd be more engine boost or more patrol range, probably one of those two. You could take flak reduction. If you watched just now, we got hit with flak. It happened. You know, people will say you can dodge flak, you can this, you can whatever, but you're still gonna hit it. It's going to happen. RNG will place the little puff somewhere and you're going to interact with it. You will take damage. You don't know when that damage is gonna be. You do everything you can to avoid it and minimize it, but it's going to happen because it's just the fact of the matter. So if you want to reduce RNG, you can take that so that when you do hit the flak, you take a little less damage because flak hurts. That's a choice for you. So this is kind of playing defensively. Personally, I think there's almost no build where you should ever not have this because this is just extremely useful. So personally, I would just stick it there and be happy with it. So in this case, your Japanese, you've got the basics covered. You've got more, faster, healthier. So you've got that, because this is basically good on everything. This is legit the way to build everything. And then after that, you're just going hard into torpedoes, because it's Japanese torpedoes. They hit like trucks. And then get some additional stuff. The patrol fighters do two things. They shoot down enemy planes, but they can also spot enemy ships. Sometimes that can be really helpful. It can be really helpful for your team to allow them to know where somebody is to shoot at them. It can give them more information. Having more of these is good. Now, if you take Interceptor, they don't spot enemy ships. But if you're taking Interceptor, it's probably because you want to defend people. And having more planes to defend them with is also good. Like, there's almost no way, no build where this is not useful. So this is probably the offensive Hakuryu, and then we could swap this into over here and make it more defensive if we wanted to. But we'll set this way for now, as though we're doing stuff in like if we're doing stuff in randoms. So people have been asking some questions. Let me answer some questions, and then we can look at the next carrier. Any other carriers other than the German ones worth taking the secondary skill? No, none, absolutely none. Do I have a YouTube channel? Yes, I think somebody did the exclamation YouTube thing. I upload stuff from the stream. I don't make specific YouTube content. Mostly I just stream. I do Twitch stuff. So I stream every day from 5 until 7, and obviously sometimes I go late. Today it's past 7. I live in Atlanta, so I'm Eastern Standard Time. But I will occasionally upload lessons or upload, reactions to certain things. Sometimes people put out videos about how much they hate CVs, so I might react to that to try to give some perspective, because there are a lot of people that don't play CVs. They don't know, and some people are extremely knowledgeable about the game, but when you don't know something intimately, sometimes there's things you miss. So I can add additional context, which I'll do. But... Anyway, okay, more clear about Interceptors, amazing stuff. Woot, thank you, Kenshin. The way you're explaining stuff is awesome. Thank you. Yes, the concealment still bugged, correct. Additional heal for Germans, will Kaga be the same? Will Kaga be the same as the Hakuryu? Yes, in this format, yes, because the Kaga's biggest thing is going to be its, the Kaga's biggest thing is going to be its torpedoes. That being said, because the Kaga has HE bombs, you might consider getting Demolition Expert, because you drop 4 bombs plus 5% fire chance. It's plus 20% fire chance if you hit all 4. They've already got some pretty good fire chance. Just make sure it's even more likely you get fires. I would look at this, maybe. I don't think I'd look at anything else really. You could either go full torp or you go torps, but also kind of some fire chance in there. Public surface announcement, respecs are free for this patch. That is correct. So when you hit this redistribute button, you'll notice sale 0. You can change this for like the next month. As much as you want, over and over again, is free. All right, so we looked at the Hakuryu. So this is the offensive Hakuryu build. We'll look at the MVR, because Sakura had just asked us about an MVR captain, so why don't we just figure that out? So what's the stuff that's going to happen on basically every CV ever? More planes is better than less planes. More planes. Faster planes are better than slow planes. Faster planes. Healthier planes are less dead. More, faster, healthier. Unfortunately, Stealthier is bugged right now, so please don't take this talent. So that's going to be the first 9 points, which we have another 10, or if we had a 21-point captain, we'd have another 12. So what does the MVR want? Well, the MVR has something actually pretty cool about it. It has 2 heal consumables. There's rockets, there's torps, there's bombs. The torps and the bombs both have a heal consumable. So this makes the heal not only longer, which it was already pretty cool, but it gives you 10% more time. It's not a lot of time, but it's something. And it gives you an additional charge, which is great, because you start with 3, that gives you 4. That's pretty amazing. You're going to get a lot of value out of that for only 2 points. That's pretty badass. I would actually take this regardless. So even if you went full fighter build or whatever, you would still take this. So this is obviously the fighter defense tree if you really wanted to balls deep into that. And then what would the offensive thing be? The non-fighter super-esque build. We've got, what, 8, 10 points to work with. Don't need sight stab on an MVR. On the German CVs actually aim very quickly. Could do this, additional secondary range and better dispersion. It's not that you expect to use your secondaries on a German CV, but they don't suck. So if it comes down to it, it's actually kind of nice to have. So can recommend. That would be okay. The torp damage is pretty minimal. The amount of damage that you're doing on the Richthofen, the torp damage is probably like only a fourth of it. So you're not going to get a lot of value out of this. And again, you're going to have other torp talents. You're really not going to need those. That's not going to be something you're going to specialize in. You could look into this if you want to reduce RNG. That's definitely a choice. This would give you additional secondary reload as well as more AA, but I don't think that's necessary. Unless you're really trying to play in a unique sort of way. The only other thing I could really think of is going to be the bomb flight control, so the bombs go faster, and the Richthofen has a unique thing with its bombs. The bombs come in so quickly, and they come high up. So they go into a dive really quick, and they aim so quickly that they can drop, and the other planes are going to continue. But if you immediately hit F to recall, they're already so close to the cloud cover that they just leave. So they're not at risk. They don't take, I mean, they're technically at risk a little, but they're not really at risk at all because of how close they are. They just leave. Technically, if you take this, you have 5% more speed that might get them out even faster. So that's a possibility. Oh, there's no adrenaline rush anymore. That's right. Okay, well, so you might think of this if you wanted to like do some kind of thing with the bombs where you're just going in, strike once, get out, go in, strike once, get out, go in, strike once, get out. But I don't think you need to do that. And they're already really fast as is. So I think at this point you have 2 points, technically 6 points left. What would you do? The rockets, no, that's a meme. I mean, if you hit a 20,000 rocket damage shot, you're only adding 600 damage. So like that's just totally a meme. I don't think that's worth it. They would have to buff this to like 6% maybe before, I don't know. There's a number where this would matter, and I don't think that number is it. I think 3% is pretty shit. So most likely I would take this because I think the additional patrol fighters are just absolutely monstrously great. And I guess if you have no other options, how much damage do the torps do? 453, and you drop 3 of them. 450 extra damage. This would be 300 extra damage for every 10,000 rocket damage you did, which is not, I mean, that's pretty brutal. It might be worth going ruthless, maybe. This is tough, man. You have 4 points. I don't know. This one's going to be to personal preference. This will hit a little harder. This will do a little more damage. This will do more damage than that because the torps are extremely fast. They're very accurate, which is a strength of the Richthofen. So I think you actually do go for this in terms of damage. I think you do. If you wanted to go for more, I think you could go for actually all of this low point stuff. Last gasp, really? Would that be a thing? I don't know. Maybe you go for something torp. No, because you don't need these. You just don't. This is crap. This is not needed because everything aims so fast. So I mean, once you get here, you just kind of have a glut of points. So you could put something over in the fighter tree, maybe, or most likely you just get this. But that means you don't have anything in the boost column, which is okay. You don't need that. One thing about the boost column, so this increasing the engine boost, something that was a change with the patch is, if you notice here, there's 22 and 40. What does that mean? means that you have 22 seconds of boost in the gas tank. So you can boost real hard for 22 seconds. And then it takes 40 seconds to refill the whole tank. Well, if you take this talent and you add an additional 7.5% to it, it goes up to 24. It's not a lot. It's an extra 2 seconds. But it takes the same amount of time to fill the tank that it did before. So technically you're regenning just a little bit faster, just a little bit more. And I know that sounds like nothing, but it's something that you actually do feel in the game when you get used to it. So I'm not saying this is a bad choice, because it's not, but most likely this is probably the build. So I'll tell him what this is real quick. So this is... whatever. Aircraft armor, survivability, expert. Because he asked me what I was saying. Proximity fuse, oh whatever. It was called ruthless before. Proximity fuse. Close quarters expert. Close quarters expert. For sorry about that. Okay, so this gentleman is in Yikes is one of the strongest damn clans in the server, and he asked me for my thoughts, so I thought that was pretty cool of him. All right, what about Midway? All right, so let me just double check and see if we have any. We're gonna need a spreadsheet, dude. Let me look at that. Shout out to Nori in Atlanta at the DeKalb Market. Woo! You've started a YouTube, so if you have a replay, newbie is taking replays. Public service announcements correct. Site stab not required for Japanese. I just played the Hakuryu and ranked without site stab, and this is what I had. So I would say no, site stab not required. Okay, no 3-point AP damage. Yeah, it's bombs too, but it's terrible. Like, the amount of damage you get for it is a joke, and even then it has to be Citadel damage to really matter, and you can't guarantee that you're going to get much in the way of Citadel damage. So it's like, I don't know. Torp speed plus aim to make hitting DDs either. I mean, you could go with the torp speed stuff if you wanted to. That's possible, but like, you really have so much already there. Want to try a round with the MVR? We can play the MVR after. I mean, with plane heal and the patrol fighter, you go for long games, simply anti-flak to keep the airplane stock up. Okay, so we'll do Midway. What's my position on CV global rankings? As in, like, how am I ranked in terms of CVs in the world? Or do you mean like how the CV class is ranked in the world or something? Okay. I don't know what my position would be on a global ladder, because we don't have a global ladder. We don't have a global ladder like that. There is a site that tracks something called PR, which is unfortunately not. It's an awkward stat because it mostly tracks how much damage you do. It tracks how much damage you do, how many kills you get, and lastly, how much you win. And when I say lastly, I mean, like, lastly is like signing your name on the test. You get the first 15%, points for free. That's whether you win or not. 15% of the score or something is whether you win, which is pretty shit. So mostly it's about how much damage you do. So it's not a very good representation, but you can see what people's win rates are. As far as me, there are a lot of CV players, so I don't really know where I would place. All right, so we'll look at the Midway now. What is the Midway? Midway's the tier 10 US tech tree CV. She's got HE rockets. She's got pretty heavy broadside of torps. They do about 30,000 damage of broadside, which gets reduced by torpedo mitigation, but still, I mean, thump. And then what else? And she's got very agile HE bombs. So gonna do basically the same. More planes is better than less planes. We're gonna have faster planes because faster planes are better than not fast planes, and more health. She has very healthy planes, but even still, you should still get this. The FDR, it's questionable if you need this or not because they literally just have tons of health, and having a little bit more doesn't matter as much, but this is still significant for the US line. So that's going to be your first 9 points. What do you do with the original or the rest, the 10 for 19 point or 12 for the 21? Heal is only on the torps. I don't know how much that would matter. It does list Flak here, which I think is actually not a bad choice, because the Midway strike planes are the slowest strike planes at tier 10 outside of the FDR. So that maybe? Actually, before we do that, Demolition Expert is pretty much mandatory because you're dropping HE bombs and you have HE rockets, so it's more chances to start fires. Fires are damage for you, but they're also damage for your team because when you set a fire, somebody might repair the fire, then they can't stop the fires that come after that. That leaves you with 9 points. I think you do take proximity fuse because part of the Midway's appeal is you may not actually do the damage, but you need to threaten the damage to try to either hit battleships or make them turn. That's what the torpedo bombers do. So I think you take this for additional threat. Probably take this because your planes are slow enough that flak can actually be a problem while you're aiming the torpedoes. Less while you're coming in with the bombs, but still pretty significant. And then for this last single point, you probably take additional engine boost again, because if you make the gas tank bigger and it refills at the same rate, then you're getting more for the same period of time. Sight stab is debatable. Some people really like sight stab for the Midway. I don't think it's necessary. I think you just need to line the torps correctly. And there are torpedo skills you could go with here if you didn't want the flak. You could move this into torp speed and reduced arming distance. I think you could move that over. So this is either going to keep your torpedo plane safe, or this is going to make them quote unquote more accurate. So more threat, more safety. But I mean, your planes have to get to the target to be able to threaten them. So that's kind of a choice. It could go one way or it could go the other way. I don't think the bomb speed really matters. Not to say that it wouldn't be nice, but I think it's kind of a waste of 4 points. But if you didn't want flak, like basically it just comes down to what do you do with the last 4 points? Do you put it here? Do you put it here? Or do you put it here? Because really there's just not much else going on. The only thing I could say is you could reduce the arming distance and take this for the additional patrol fighters. This is probably the build. But I would actually drop this because I only have the 19-point captain, and I think this is what I take. So more faster, healthier, additional fire chance because rockets and bombs, increased torp threat. I might not land the torps. I mean, it's really down to somebody letting me get the line on them to land the torps, or being in a situation where I can force them to take the torps. And then this is too good not to take, and some additional engine boost. Probably that. Look at the Audacious. Audacious, so the Audacious, the British planes have poor penetration, but they set a lot of fires, potentially floods. Their torps are actually kind of a highlight of the line because they're extremely maneuverable. So definitely going to be looking at torps because the stuff that you can't scratch with the bombs because it's a heavily armored battleship. The stuff that you can't scratch with the rockets because it's a heavily armed cruiser, you can torp both of them. So having the torps and making sure that the torps are good is kind of important. So more planes, faster planes, healthier planes, that's a given. Not going to change that. So we've got an additional 10, kind of 12, because 21 point captain. I guess this is Cunningham, so I could probably just boost this up. We'll just go ahead and do that now. So where would we put this? More fires and floods, or more fires, because we have HE rockets and HE bombs. Definitely put that there. We have an additional 9 points. I really think this should be in every build. I think this is so extremely useful that you just kind of can't not do that. And this is probably a little controversial, but I think I would take this. And then what would I do with the remaining 3? Ooh. I'd have to drop this in order to get Ruthless. Is Proxy Fuse, is that worth doing? You do 590, it add basically 600 damage per torp. That's 1800 damage if you land all 3 on a battleship. Less on a cruiser, because cruisers have shitty protection, and it's no increase at all on a destroyer if you torp a destroyer, but you probably just fucked them up anyway, because they have no... It's a destroyer, they have very little health. You could potentially pull points out of Survivability Expert just because of how much health they have if you really wanted to kind of get flexible with it, but I wouldn't recommend that. If you take this, okay, so theoretically with the carpet bombers, right? Dive bombers are going to come in, they're going to swing up, and they're going to come down, which means they're getting shot, they're getting shot, they're getting shot, they're getting shot, and then they drop. So they take all kinds of AA damage. Carpet bombers don't. They just come in, drop their shit, and they bail. That's it. That's their interaction. They come in, drop, and they're gone. So because of that, the faster you go, the faster you're getting through AA, the faster you're in and you're out and you're gone. So theoretically, the faster you do that, the more likely you have enough planes to spin right back around and get the second drop off. So this actually turns into like a bit of a health buff almost in terms of speed. The speed for the dive bombers on the Midway, they'll get you to the target faster, but you're still going to be stuck in that animation regardless. Versus the carpet bombs, which literally just fly over the target. I think this is actually pretty strong. The question is this so strong that it's better than 1800 damage off of a triple of like hitting 3 torps? I could take it if I dropped this. Or if I dropped this, which would give me 2 points left? Where would I put the 2 points to make it better than having that? I could put it into improved engine boost and last gasp. I could do that. I could drop the patrol fighter, just give up on that, and then have a single one and just take the additional there. I could do that too. It would be cool to have army distance and speed or whatever on the Audacious, but at the same time, the torps are so maneuverable that you don't really have to be artistic about it. So I don't know about that. I guess there's a lot of play in this, because you could move this into healing for the torps, because the torps are so extremely powerful, or not powerful but reliable. That'll give you an additional heal, plus the heal's a little stronger, which is also cool while they do fair damage. Because I mean, you can already interact with things well enough. This just technically would do it a little better. I don't know, that's tough. There's a lot of options here. There's a lot of choices where this could go. I don't want to abandon this. I think this is just so damn good. So extremely good. That's not shit. I think I take this to shore up the weakness, because if there's stuff that we can bomb, if we're against an Ohio, if we're against a Montana, we can bomb the fuck out of it. I mean, we can savage it with the carpet bombs. The problem comes in when we start interacting with battleships that we just can't bust. So, not to say an additional 1800 damage, like, does the battleship even care? Really? Does the battleship even care? But it's still something. It's still a little more. I mean, if you get 2 drops on them, it's almost 4,000 damage, which is really nothing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Because keeping an extra plane alive means another drop, and another drop theoretically, like, if you get the drop off, that's like 5,000 damage per plane. So you're saving 5,000 damage for a follow-up strike here, potentially, versus this, which is 1,800 damage in a drop. This would technically net you more damage, but it's not reliable damage. This is reliable. You hit the torp, it does the damage. I don't know. This is tough. And of course, you could just even forget about these in terms of extra damage and go for the safety, because you have a lot of health. So theoretically, if the only, like, you're hard to take down by just AA alone, because of how tanky the British planes are. So you could also do flak. I mean, this is ideally what the commander rework is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you have multiple options, so you could think, ooh, I could do this. Ooh, I could do that. Ooh, let's try this instead. I mean, that's really the gimmick, right? That's the purpose, is to give you so many options that you have to make choices rather than everybody just picks the same cookie cutter shit. I'm gonna take this. Am I going to? I'll take this for now, and if I change it, I change it. That'll be interesting to test. All right, and then we've got the Roosevelt. So this one is a tier 10. It's a special ship. It's an awkward ship. This is a competitive ship. It works like a battering ram. So when it comes into randoms and people aren't coordinated enough to deal with it, it's pretty obnoxious. More is always better, faster. Maybe we don't take this. Maybe these are 3 points we can harvest. We'll keep that in the back of the mind. So theoretically, we've got 9, we got 10, maybe 12 points remaining. We definitely take this. Why? Because the broadside off of an FDR is about 34,000 damage if you land all 8 torps. They don't do a lot of damage each. It's 423 bonus damage, you know, per torp. Again, assuming you're hitting something that makes the damage go away in the first place. All you're doing is bringing it back. You're bringing back potential damage that you lost. But still, I mean, it's 400, but you drop 8 at a time. So theoretically, that's like 3,400 damage in a single drop. So that's significant, especially because you're going to get multiple drops with the torp planes. Definitely take this. MVR eats flak like it's going out of style. It eats a lot of flak. This would shore a weakness, but that's not what the FDR is for. So you have 4 points at this part, because this is a 19-point commander. You don't get really any benefit out of this. You really don't need to do this. I think that's a waste. I think it's so maneuverable and so capable that this is actually silly. So that would be a waste of time. Sight stab is not required. It actually aims very quickly. It's just a blunt, obnoxious hammer. So I actually think you would go with Demolition Expert, because you can drop and hit up to 8 bombs, and you can fire off, how many rockets is this? Because it's dumb. 52 rockets. You're not going to land all of the rockets, but theoretically, like, you might land 30 of them, so it's a 30% increased chance of fire. You have potentially a 40% chance of increased fire off of a bomb drop. I think you take Demolition Expert, and that leaves you with 1 point, which is either going to be increased patrol radius, although really that's not what the FDR does. It's not responsive enough to defend people, or additional engine boost duration, which would probably be the play. Because again, the bigger the capacity, the faster the regen rate, because it's filling at the same rate. Probably going to be something like this. Because if you're playing the FDR, you are not playing defensively. That is not what the FDR does. The FDR is balls deep aggression. The additional fire is going to be worth more than the 5% speed, which is basically fuck all, because the Roosevelt is very slow. So this is damage, this is resilience, This is the basic stuff. Theoretically, you could move this 3 points if you really wanted to. But what would you move it to? I suppose you could do that. Does that be worth it though? Would that be okay? I don't know. I think this is probably the most approachable, or you could do this because you're going to use multiple engine cooldowns while you're out on a single flight. So you might actually do this to allow you to cycle through them faster because you might be on bombs for like 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know. Not sure. But it would probably look something like this. This is pretty mandatory, although this is up in the air. This is a definite. There's too much fire chance not to do it. This is a definite because you will eat flak in the FDR. You eat it like Pac-Man pellets. And then proxy fuse, I think, is too important because literally you're a sledgehammer that just smashes things. That is your goal in life, so this is pretty much required. So 2 points. I don't have enough for this to like master this or whatever, so I don't know. What would I do? Would I take this over that? Required 1 point. Could I do this? Sure. Because then at least I can hit the master button. Whatever. Alright, so that's going to be the tier 10s. And basically, all of the lower tier stuff is similar. It's literally derivative. It's literally the same stuff. So if you wanted to look at like a Shikaku build, this, specializing in torps, additional consumable. Sure, that's a good Shikaku build. It's a viable Ryujo build as well. The only thing that technically would need to change was the Germans, is you don't have the heals on the tier 4s and 6. So tier 4 and 6, you would not be looking at repair specialists. These 2 points would go somewhere else. Wherever you wanted to put them, really. But I think and also tier 4 and 6, the secondaries are not great, although this is technically better than what it used to be. So, I mean, maybe you do it. But I don't run secondaries at all on the tier 4 and 6 German tech tree carriers. So that's theoretically 6 points that you can move to something else. Okay, so let me see if anything has happened in the chat. The average CV player is really bad with fighters and doesn't use it as much. Sure. How's it going? Have you updated your builds as of yet? Just curious about MVR. I literally talked about the MVR a few minutes ago if you wanted the full discussion, but for the MVR, more, faster, healthier, stealthier, or sorry, healthier, stealthier is broken right now. Do not take this, it is bugged. So that's 9 points. We're gonna get an additional heal. We're gonna get additional secondary range, and everything is accurate and fast enough that you don't need any of this stuff. You could, if you wanted to take proxy fuse, maybe try to squeeze it in there somewhere, but in general, everything is fine. This additional 3% to rocket damage and bomb damage is just a joke. I can't agree with that. I think that's pretty terrible. So this is what my MVR build is. More, faster, healthier. Then we've got additional heals because we have heals on the torps and the bombs. We have additional secondaries, not because we expect to use them, but at least we have it in our back pocket. And then with the remaining points, we've got additional fighters. And I think there's another 2 points, which I really just don't see anything on this line I care about, which is why we have additional engine boost and additional patrol range. Because the fighters, you know, I mean, having more patrol range ain't bad. So that's going to be the MVR stuff. Bugged how? So I've done this explanation, but we shall do it again because people are still learning about it. So when you've got... this is the concealment talent. So you're going to have 15% less concealment on your hull. It's going to be smaller, which is cool. That's cool. But because you have this cool technologically reflective camo and stuff, ooh, your planes don't know where you are at all times, so it takes them longer to find you. So what that means is when your planes are recalled and they're trying to find you, you're 50% slower on the return. So it might be like instead of 40 seconds, it's 80 seconds. So I mean that's okay. Planes take longer to get back. That's okay. Here's where the problem comes in. You come over, you take your shot, pew, and now it's in a recall state. And that recall state means instead of going up in 2 seconds and then getting invulnerable and then flying home, it takes 4 seconds. So your planes are you're just sitting there waiting to be shot for 4 seconds. It's very likely planes get murdered on the way out, which means you're reducing your detection, but you're throwing away planes to do it. That's a problem. So cannot recommend. No bueno. German fighters now work properly in terms of chasing speed. Yes, they do. That was corrected in this patch. There are no more stealth fighters. The stealth fighters have been removed, and all fighters have. This is just fatiguing working through all the captains. Well, the good news is, like, as far as the CVs go, basically this build can be copy and pasted on all the other ones, except, of course, the tier 4s and 6, because they don't have a heal, and you probably don't care about the secondaries on them, so you'd put it somewhere else. But I think on just about everything else, this carries through. I have this on the Audacious, the additional heal. I don't know. This one was so tough to pick. You could pull the heal off, maybe? I don't know. There's just so many options. Just came back. The returning minus also affects the time it takes for them to go invulnerable. Yes, I don't think it's supposed to. I think it's just supposed to affect when they're flying home, not when they're leaving. But I guess the coding says once it leaves your control, once it goes AI control and it's recalling, all of the recalling is slower. So they just get shot down, which sucks. That's not a bug though. That's what Wargaming intended. I don't think so. There's a big difference between you fly out with your rocket planes, you do something, and then your planes are slower to come back. Well, all that means is you use something other than rocket planes. You use torps, you use bombs, you use something else. You can't just do rockets, or do torps, because they're coming back more slowly. That's the idea. That's the concept. The idea that in order to be stealthier, not only do you have to go rockets, but now something else because they're still coming back, but then something else because those are still coming back, and rotate it, and you lose planes for free too. That doesn't make sense. That seems silly. So the slower, like the forcing you to rotate through your options makes sense. The throwing away 2 to 3 planes every time you go out to attack something just because you wanted to do the rotating thing, like it, no. That to me is a coding glitch. That's not correct. The 50% slower returning time is already a huge downside. It is. Because sometimes, you know, there's a situation and that situation calls for rockets, or that situation comes for torps. That's what it calls for. And you might throw torps and then you have some torps still on the deck, so you throw those too. By the time you get back, the first ones have landed, you keep throwing them. That's what you do. This changes that. How the Enterprise? Okay. How would we do the Enterprise? We could do the Enterprise real quick. Enterprise is here. So how would we do the Enterprise? All right, well, it's more, faster, healthier, baseline for everything. The Enterprise has a buffed fighter consumable. What does that mean? At tier 8, instead of 5 fighter planes on its consumable, it has 10. So that's one thing. Secondly, instead of having a radius that's normal, it's got an extra special big one, radius. So if you get this talent, which makes the radius 10% bigger, and then this talent, which makes it 10% bigger, it gets it gets really dumb. Like, it's ginormous. And not only that, but it has 10 fighters there to shoot down just all sorts of stuff. So on the one hand, it might look like a meme build, but it's almost perfectly acceptable to go with, you know, these first 3 in fighters or all 4 in fighters. Not even a joke. This is so extremely potent with the Enterprise. It might get altered, but they have a habit of not altering premium, so They might just let it be what it is. Realistically, this is at least these three. So we'll just do that. For the Enterprise, you're getting these. Why? Because that's one of the highlights of the Enterprise. That's absolutely something you should look into. You don't need a heal. Your torps are fine. Having some more heal to it really isn't going to change it. It's okay. You're not going to need that. Flak, the Enterprise is pretty nimble, plus it's tier 8. Tier 8's going to have less flak than tier 10, so it's even less likely that you're going to have a flak interaction. Not to say you couldn't be up-tiered. So this is unlikely to be the play. All you have to set fires is rockets. That's not going to be good enough. Again, this little 3% is troll, so I don't see anything happening there. Sight stab's not a bad choice, just because the AP bombs are extremely slow to aim. Just bad to aim. You could get some damage out of the torps. You'd be slinging about 2,000 damage, right? About 2,000 damage on a 3-drop. So this would not be a bad choice, and that would leave you with 2 points. Bomb speed doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Personal preference, I would err on doesn't matter. Probably not worth it. This is depending on how you wanted to play. But remember, this doesn't spot, so if you want plain spotting, don't take that. And then you'd be left with what, 2 points? Probably last gasp and additional engine boost. This would probably be the play, because when you go out with rocket planes, you have 12 rocket planes, which means if you catch a DD that's off in the middle of nowhere, you can strike. They've probably turned on their AA and killed 1, maybe 2 planes, so you still have 4 at that point. You can strike a 3rd time. The fact that you can roll out with 12 planes is extremely powerful against isolated targets, even nimble ones, because rocket planes are nimble. Also, the Enterprise has well, when the rework first came out, US planes could also do the thing where you start the attack and you make a right angle. That's been removed from the tech tree, which sucks. But the Enterprise still has it because they didn't mess with the premium. So the ability to cut in like that and be maneuverable can be pretty nasty. So having the engine boost is important, and also the last gasps. Theoretically, your strike, and on that 3rd time, you might have lost 3 planes by then. Get a full boost back for a return strike. Also, it's useful on torps. So you'd probably end up looking like this, I think. Because there's just not a lot that you would need. And again, this is up in the air. If you didn't want this, you'd probably throw it into sight stab to help out with the AP bombs. Because this is going to take away the spotting on hostile ships. So if you want your fighters to be able to spot, then you could take sight stab. If not, then I think you take Interceptor. That's a personal choice. I'll try this. So, I don't have the 2 points for it or whatever. So I have 1 extra point for this captain. The hell would I pick? Maybe I take a 2-pointer? What would I pick? I don't know. I could just not take any boost talents. I think that'd be silly. There we go. Whatever. We'll just do that. Ta-da! All right. What equipment do I use for the Enterprise? The upgrades for the Enterprise are... I already had it up. These two, just pick the ones that look like planes. When it comes to this one, you don't need additional attack time on your torps or your rockets. You don't need it. You don't need secondaries. The Enterprise is not a brawling ship. You don't take her in and use secondaries. So it really just comes down to torp speed, because there's really nothing else to pick. As far as what I would buff, I lean heavily on the rockets. I find that to be a highlight of this ship. The torps are solid, which is cool, so you could buff the torps if you wanted to, but I lean heavily on the rockets. And the AP bombs are extremely conditional, because they don't have a lot of good pen, and their drop is pretty chaotic. So I put the health into the rockets to milk them for all they're worth. And for slot 5, I do flight control mod for 2 additional planes and bonus regen. I find that to be very important, especially because we're focusing on these 2 versions of planes because this is wildly unpredictable and not reliable. So having additional rockets and additional torps and additional regen, I think, is very important. Because even though the Enterprise regens very quickly, because you're stuck with like 2 out of 3 planes, you need to have the best you can. If you wanted to, especially in a competitive setting, if you're willing to give up some planes, you could do the squadron consumable, because again, you have a very special fighter or patrol fighter that it can be monstrously large. Although, actually, did they change this? Did they change that? Let's check. Graf Zeppelin 3. Okay, so this is 3. The Enterprise is 3.6 base, so it's 20% larger patrol radius than all other Tier 8 fighters. What is the Midway at? 3.5. So it has slightly better than Tier 10 patrol radius, and you can make it larger still. So I guess it's not as terribly scary broken as I was worried about, but okay. So yeah, that's probably what we would do with the Enterprise. So I would personally go with flight control mod, but if you're doing something like ranked, or if you're doing something competitive, you might consider this to increase the duration on the patrol fighters, which is a highlight of the Enterprise, so it would make sense to do that. Can I hover over the Midway captain for 10 seconds to grab a screenshot? Sure. So this is the Midway captain. More, faster, healthier. Stealthier is bugged at the moment, so more, faster, healthier. Additional fire chance because rockets and bombs. Additional torp damage because the torp throw weight of the Midway is really big, so that's going to give it more threat. If you really have trouble landing the torps, you could instead put them into these points to reduce the arming time and make them a little faster, I guess. And then with the remaining points, some extra engine boost and the bonus fighters, because having more consumables is fucking crazy cool. Okay. You recommend longer heal? If you're in a situation where you can, make use of it, Saipan. All right, we can look at the Saipan. See, do we have a commander for this? Typically for the Saipan, I would use my Midway commander. Roosevelt is really his own thing. Just do this real quick. Midway commander for the Saipan. What would that be? Saipan would be the same. More, faster, healthier, additional fire chance because you have tiny Tims, which technically get less out of the HE rockets because you fire less HE rockets with the tiny Tims, but you still have the Midway bombs. You drop 4, so that's still plus 20% fire chance. I think this is a little less useful maybe than on the Midway because you do drop less bombs. So you could move this into something else if you really wanted to. Having the additional heal on a Saipan, would that be worth it? That could be cool, just because the Saipan has for those that don't know, the Saipan is a mini Midway. It's a Midway, but it has less planes. It has less planes, it regens slower, and they strike in smaller groups, which kind of sucks. When you strike, the planes that are actually going to shoot, all the rest of the planes are basically armor. That they die first to get those planes to the target to shoot. And because the Saipan only throws 6 planes, you only have 4 planes of armor, and that ain't a lot of armor. They tend to get roasted pretty quick. Now, the heal would only interact on the torpedoes, but the torpedoes are actually one of the highlights of the Saipan, because they do 6,500 damage per torp, and you drop 4 of them. So getting the Ruthless thing, that's 2,400 damage, and that's potentially, because you're in a Tier 8, you might go against a Tier 6. That could be a lot of damage. You definitely get proximity fuse. You absolutely get proximity fuse. This is a question if you take this or not. You might move this into some torp talents if you want to buff that, or you could move it into the heal if you really wanted to have an additional heal on your torpedo planes. This is a 19-point commander, so if we had 2 more points... we could just put it in the heal, which is the same thing we could do with the Midway, to be fair. Or put it into some point thing. But I mean, in general, the torpedo planes are you can drop pretty close. You can pretty much, you can get good drops. You can make good things happen. You don't have to really dive into this to make it work. Probably go with the heal. If you had an additional 2 points, if it was a 21-point captain, you'd probably go for the heal. So that would be the Saipan. Special Bomber Midway. Thoughts on enhanced aircraft armor outside of the FDR, particularly in ranked, where teams are often very bunched up. Just a second, please. Okay, nope, don't have to worry about that. As far as the special bomber Midway, I think what you're talking about is, for the Midway, there's a unique, which is what I use. I use the unique module, which makes the bombs hit a little harder and they move faster. There's really nothing about this build I think that I would change. You can double down on the speed, give them yet another 5% boost, but the Midway, it's not the FDR. The FDR is a sledgehammer in every sense of the term. The Midway has a little more nuance to it. It's a little more maneuverable. So having an additional 5% onto the bombs would make them go 170. So 17 and a half is what, 8 and a half. So basically 179. I mean, it's faster, but I don't think you'd have to worry about it. The bombs sight up quickly enough, having an additional few knots, I mean, you could do it. I don't really think you'd gain anything out of it. The biggest thing is, while your additional 9 knots is going to get you through the flak a little faster, or through the AA a little faster, it's also going to get you across the map a little faster. So, I mean, that's good. But is it worth 4 points to get just the bombs to the target a little bit faster? I don't know about that. And then further, the bombs are still, they're going to hover in the short range of AA of a ship while they're going up and coming down. So that's where they're eating most of the damage that they take. And again, like, having faster planes doesn't change that animation. You still just have to loiter there getting shot. So I don't know about that. But thoughts on enhanced aircraft armor. So I think that's what, the Flak, right? Yeah. So if you're in ranked and you have people that are working together, if you're in competitive and you have people that are working together, they have overlapping flak, then can we do the Indomitable? We'll do that in a second. If you have overlapping flak is something you can place the flak, you can avoid most of the flak, you will get hit by flak. You will. The question is it defensive fire flak and planes just evaporate into dust? Is it a wall of flak that you can't avoid and you just all of a sudden went half health or less on a bunch of different planes? It's gonna happen. The real question in a competitive sense is, if you've got 2 CVs going against each other and this guy eats flak randomly and he's down 7 planes, well then the enemy CV has 7 planes more than your team CV. So if that talent is the difference between getting ripped up and, yeah, you've been told by very reliable sources good players never hit flak. Yeah, good players love to tell you how good they are. That's part of being a good player. So what the anti-flak thing does is it reduces RNG. Because when you do hit flak, maybe it's 1 out of 4 games, maybe it's twice in a game, whatever. When you do hit flak, it might result in still getting the drop off so that you're still able to keep pace with the enemy CV. Because CVs are fighting each other. They're racing each other. Sometimes they're racing for damage. Who can outpace the other so that their team can get ahead? Sometimes it's for influence. Who can out-influence the other so they can get ahead? And it comes down to timing. You know, how quickly can you handle this situation on this flank so that you can get over there to help this situation on that flank and then come back and then salvage this shit now? And you need to be able to go. And if you came over, you got clapped by flak. Shit. You didn't get to do the thing you had to do. Now you have to come back. And now suddenly you're 40 seconds off pace. You're 60 seconds off pace. Damn it. Maybe the team can recover, but you as a CV are now off pace, and maybe that talent is able to get you through to still be able to do the thing. And you might lose the resources because you hit flak, but if you can still get the damage to keep pace, Yeah, so in terms of competitive, I would actually recommend it. Not because it's going to be the difference, but because it's going to help it not be the difference. So that's what I would say to that. All right, so we'll look at the Indomitable. So the Indomitable is actually a weird CV. She uses slingshotting, which is very very important to her gameplay loop because she has very few planes. More planes, faster planes, healthier. I mean, it's everything. every single CV, except maybe the FDR. But that's 9. You have 10 points, potentially 12 if you have a 21-point commander. Where would you put them? First off, demolition expert. You make fires happen. You don't have any torps. You make fires. This is extremely important. Fires. Flak's not going to be a problem for you because for the most part you're in between flak clouds. You're basically slingshotting through it, so this would not be a consideration. This is bugged. Don't do it. I would actually go with this because almost all of your interaction, the Indomitable has 2 types of planes. It's got rocket planes, which are kind of shit, and then it's got bombs, which are the lifeblood of the carrier. You go out, with your 4 planes, you drop. 2 of them come down, the other 2 break off. While they're breaking off, that's called a slingshot. You're going to take last gasp for that. We're going to take additional engine boost for that. That means that once that slingshot happens, last gasp is going to completely refill your boost bar, and having additional boost in the tank means you're going to get even more out of it. So these 2 are going to work together to give you even more pursuit, even more movement. So that's going to leave you with 3 points left. If you have a 21-point commander, where would you put those? You could take this, but the Indomitable only has 2 types of planes. So because of that, each of its 2 types of planes has 4 fighters. That would give you 5, which means you could go up to 10. But you're only getting 2 additional fighters out of it, not 3 like you would on other CVs. So technically it's a little different. So it's not quite as valuable. Also, the Indomitable is a pretty aggressive CV. It's a pressure CV. You're trying to go out and you're trying to keep riding, keep pushing, keep knocking stuff down, keep lighting stuff on fire. Just keep rolling constant pressure. So it's not a very defensive CV, and being in a defensive posture where you have to break off to help your team can actually hurt you because you might need to roll damage cons and stay on pace. And pulling you off pace to do defensive things can screw up your loop. So I don't know if you invest in this per se. So let's say you have 3 points. I really don't think you take any of the fighter stuff. You definitely don't take additional secondary range. So I think you actually end up taking sight stab, which you don't need. But with slingshotting, you drop, you come through. And then when the slingshot ends, the camera whips over to the other planes. They start taking AA again, and then you can start your next drop almost immediately. That's what the Indomitable does. So you're in the attack animation, you're firming up, you drop. And theoretically, this would help you firm just a little bit faster, which means it's a little bit less interaction with the AA, which could mean the difference between losing a plane or not. Also could be the difference between tightening up the reticle just a little bit better in case you over slingshot or something and you might end up with a flyby. So I think sight stab is the I think that's the play if you've got the 21 points. Because this is bugged, you don't care about this. These are really not in your wheelhouse. You don't have AP, you don't have torps. You're not using your secondaries. You don't have torps. There's nothing else to spend it on, really. And this boost consumable cycle, I don't even think you'd even begin to care about. So it would probably be that. I think that's what it is. But I think sight stab would be the last choice because this is going to give you the least benefit. Okay, what is an example of a defensive CV? Well, There's not one. That's actually something that Wargaming might work on. So Wargaming has previously said, if I understand correctly, I could be wrong, that, you know, there were a lot of CVs. When initially CVs were introduced, they had tier 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 10. They had all the different tiers. But CVs were really niche. They were very hard to play. So not a lot of people played them. And if you take this small little player base and you sprinkle them across 7 different tiers, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 7 different tiers, you've got your 20 or your 40 people sprinkled 7 different sections of whatever, you could have a long wait because the matchmaker just might not be able to find another player for you to play with. So they reduced the amount of CVs down to even tiers, 4, 6, 8, 10. So that way they only break the player base up 4 ways because, again, it's a little bit of a niche class. But they removed all sorts of CVs that were 5 and 7 and 9 and whatever. So could you bring them back? Well, they said they might, but when they do, they might look for a support CV. What that is, how that would roll out, I'm not sure. I think it would probably wrangle around some kind of consumable. It'd have less damage, but it'd have more consumables, stuff like that. So I'm not exactly sure. That's not been introduced. But in terms of like what is a supportive CV, you could play the Enterprise supportively. I mean, you could play any CV supportively, but like you just have to think about what is the CV's win condition. On the Roosevelt, the win condition of the CV is to go out and beat the ever-living crap out of any target that's slow enough for you to beat the shit out of it. So battleships, you just slam them. Now an FDR could do 300,000 damage, but what is 300,000 damage? It's 2 battleships. Battleship 100,000 health, 50,000 health in healing. That's 1 battleship. You've done 2 battleships. Does you killing 2 battleships win the game? Maybe, but it might not be won there. But that's what the FDR does. It bashes things. It breaks stuff up like a wrecking ball. Indomitable is more nimble. It's in small little bites, but that's because of the offensive slingshotting thing. It's literally made different than other CVs because that's just how it has to work. All of the other CVs, however, except for the tier 4s because they don't have fighters, could be played defensively. It's not actually like CVs play defensively in a few ways. They play defensively in that they give intelligence to their team so their team can make better decisions. They play they play defensively in dropping fighters for their friends to try to keep a CV off them, maybe keep them dark, unlit, so that people can't shoot at them, or at least disincentivize, coming over to screw with them. So I don't think you could really say there are any carriers that can't play defensively, but the win condition for a Midway is going to be, knocking stuff. It's not quite an FDR, but it's still really powerful. The torps can move things. The bombs can hurt things and get damage cons, and your team can follow up on that. The rockets aren't that great. But you still have the accuracy to be able to deal with nimble or small, slightly agile things. So you can deal with a lot of stuff, but mostly your defending is pushing the enemy out of position or dealing with a destroyer or lighting stuff, things of those natures, that nature. So I don't. It's a weird question to say. What is a defensive CV? Because there's not really many. It just comes down to, does the CV have to do X to win? And if X is out and out aggression, well, then they can't do defensive. But I think all the other CVs can. Maybe the Japanese CVs really just want to go hard, because I did find when I was playing the Hakuryu, if I wasn't going balls deep, I was probably falling behind until we got to this fighter thing where the fighters fucking mattered. Then I could play defensively. Then I could make it work. But until I had those points in the fighters to make shit happen, if I wasn't out there trying to beat the shit out of somebody, I was falling behind, and it was just loss after loss after loss. Like, my influence was just not there. Where I could, in the Midway, I could go out and influence things. I could reach out and touch somebody. Hakuryu was much, much less nimble. Yeah. Are Interceptors worth it, or just the improved reactions? The Interceptors are worth it, partially because they're still new, so if you drop a fighter, other people drop a fighter and think they're good, and then suddenly, oh fuck, they get locked onto and they lose planes. So that's always a nice little surprise, because the interceptors don't get affected by patrol planes. Also, it makes the patrol 10% bigger, which is not a joke. It's pretty significant. In your opinion, interceptors are a negative skill? Oh, I actually have found that I have really enjoyed them. But that's it, right? What is it? So interceptors, you don't spot enemies anymore with them, so you can't play them offensively. You play them defensively, but they are much better at defense because they can't be pulled off by an enemy CV's patrol planes, and because of that, they can strike enemy planes through enemy patrol planes, which is important as well. So they become they have a larger patrol radius. They become the threat against enemy planes that they have to be to deter the enemy planes, and they have the ability to get to the enemy planes. The only way that an interceptor is not going to get a kill is if either A, the enemy recalls before it gets to them, or B, the enemy drags them across friendly surface ships that'll shoot them down. Otherwise, they're going to go there and get kills. But that's 7 points on a CV that relies on fires and floods? What CV? What are you talking about? Try playing without them, but with enhanced reactions. Sure. Yeah, Audacious. I just ranked out. So we played, this is what I played with the Hakuryu. Now I've changed this, but it was more faster, healthier, and then it was just all of this. That's what it was. So all 4. And this was the result, because I could actually control the enemy CV. So, I mean, yeah, we could not do it. The patrol would, the radius would be a little smaller, but there were several times where I got kills through enemy patrol craft. So, I don't know. I feel like, I still feel like it's worthwhile. If only for the increased patrol radius adding on top of this patrol radius increase. Am I redoing commanders? Well, I mean, as I go. Yeah, it's my spec. I mean, I could dick with it and then just decide, nah, I really don't care. In which case, stop using it. That's the purpose of the rework, is to give you a lot of options and you pick whatever you want to pick. So the fighter speed buff, is it as wonderful as expected? They do shit. It's great. It's nice that they do things. I'm happy that they do things. It's exciting. There's actually on... is it the last one? No. Second to last? Second to last one, I think. Is it this one? It was this one. We had the Richthofen was going for us. Like we had almost no health. We had like 4,000 health at the end of it. And the big thing is with this enhanced reactions, once somebody breaches the patrol, it's almost an instant pickup. They come over and they start to attack, which you kind of want the additional patrol radius so that this interacts with this to give you more 360-degree protection. And it's not that we got a lot of fighter kills, but it forced the enemy CV to make a move as quickly as possible before his shit was dead, because then otherwise he doesn't get to do anything. So that I don't know. I liked it. I liked it a lot.